welcome to episode 39 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Joining me today to talk about Final Fantasy 13-2, we have the Grand Maester of the Universe.
This is John McCarroll. I am junior pictures editor.
I love how we gave your new title on Pat's show, but we can't say it on this show.
It's because Eric hasn't made his post yet.
Okay, never mind. All right. We have the man from Japan who dresses like Indiana Jones, and I always stare at him in Skype like this. It's very weird.
You stare at me on Skype?
Well, I mean, I'm staring at your picture on Skype, and it's you dressed up as Indiana Jones, and you have, like, horrible red eye in it, and it freaks me out.
I apologize. I'm Steven, and I'm Taylor on the boards.
And we have the person who is subjecting themselves to Final Fantasy 13.
Kimberly Wallace, K-Star on the boards.
So I have made a New Year's resolution that I am going to try to be more positive on this podcast, particularly about JRPGs, because, you know, I have a tendency to be negative. I have a tendency to point out flaws in games that I very much enjoy. So for the rest of this podcast, I will probably remain silent as we talk about the demo of Final Fantasy 13-2, which just came out this week. We've all sat down and played it. We all seem to have different opinions on it, but I think it's an important game to talk about. It's really the first huge JRPG release of 2012. So, Kim, you are the one who is in the middle of Final Fantasy 13. So you're playing that. You're like, what, about 18 hours in? That's where
about 18 hours right now. I think I'm on chapter 8 or 9.
Okay. So now where do you stand? Before we talk about 13-2, let's figure out where everybody stands on 13. First off, everybody knows where I stand on 13. So
yeah, I don't feel like we need to spend too much time on that.
We don't have to do that again. So, Kim, where do you stand on 13? What are your general thoughts of it?
Well, I think it's a very pretty game. And that's what it really has going for it. I like the environments. I like how they're varied, but there comes a problem with going in a straight line all the time. And I find that I think the battle system is fun. I like when you can take a traditional battle system and make it go fast and still make it engaging, because I think it's engaging. I know Rob disagrees with that, but we'll stick to that. Story and character-wise, don't care. Just don't care. I do have I like Lightning, but I don't love her. I like that they brought a character like her and she has layers, because I don't think we get enough of that, really. We get these one-dimensional characters a lot, and I appreciate that, but what I'm finding is that I really I'm finding it hard to keep going in the game, and it sucks because you have games like Dragon Age 2 where we complained about the environments not being varied enough. And I can say with full confidence I've had more fun playing Dragon Age 2 than Final Fantasy 13, because the environments can be as pretty as they can make them, but it doesn't matter if I can't explore and I can't engage. So
you're talking about the original 13, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Steven, where do you stand on 13?
I actually beat it for the first time 4 days ago. And I stand in a position where I think it's a fun game. I think it has terrible pacing, and I think it loses a lot of what people loved about the old ones, and that's what people take issue with. I think it's a very different direction than the series has gone in the past, and I think the storytelling, and based on what I've seen in 13-2, I agree with that in that game as well. I feel like the storytelling is a little absurd, and you can't really engage with the characters because it doesn't really have any character moments.
Yeah, how do you feel about 13's characters? I'm just curious, because I know you and me really go for story and characters.
I feel like they had great ideas for characters, but then... I don't know if you guys recall, but after Final Fantasy 12 came out, they came out and they said that a big problem with that game for them was that it went through several different directions, and that's why they felt like it wasn't as strong as it could have been. And I feel like the same thing happened in 13. Like, they had so many ideas, but they didn't really know what game they were trying to build. And in doing so, they kind of forgot to have characters that have any sort of believable or, you know, any sort of plot or story that you actually care about. Like, I just beat Radiant Historia, and the characters in that game have no voices, and, you know, that game you go through a lot of the same areas over and over again, whereas the characters in that, their struggles are a little more believable, and they're tied down in, like, actual struggles, whereas in 13, it's like, oh my god, LOL's the Foul Sea. I feel struck by the Foul Sea and fate and Foul Sea, and it's really bad.
Foul.
One thing that I find interesting is the fact that I don't find a lack of voice acting to, in fact, remove my immersion in the game. I kind of find it in RPGs, or specifically JRPGs, to engage me. I don't listen to voice acting in games. I'll listen to the first chunk of it, and then as soon as I'm done reading the subtitle, I'll press the button.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me about that with Dragon Age, and I thought that was very, very different from the way I was playing it, where I actually turned the subtitles off.
See, I agree with you, John, to an extent. I think in certain games, if the voice acting is good and the writing permits it, I think voice acting can get you more into the characters. But
I think that maybe that's why it fails in JRPGs, is because JRPGs tend to be really, really long-winded. Mm-hmm. And maybe voice acting isn't so useful there because, you're going through lines and lines and lines of dialogue.
We've talked about voice acting before, and there's a very different thing between a literal translation where we're going to make sure that this is exactly what is said in the original Japanese, and then
a localization.
Exactly, where you're making it sound natural to native English speakers. And I think that more and more the fans have really started to desire, and we see this on message boards, fans really want the literal translation these days. That's what I hear a lot of, is people saying, we want the literal translation.
And I think that they really don't want that. They think that they want that.
Yeah, the literal translation usually hurts my ears. Like, it doesn't sound right. Being a native English speaker, it doesn't sound right. Adding to like the end of a statement or whatever, or having an improper inflection, or just it completely screws it up for me, and then it starts being painful to listen to, and that's when I do what John does, and I skip it, and I start skipping the actual dialogue, the audio.
That's actually something that I noticed. Like, I study Japanese, and that's something I noticed over time, is that if you just translate something literally, you don't get something that sounds like fluid English. You get something that sounds like Japanese translated into English. There's an additional step after that, I think, of making it sound natural to an English speaker that is basically necessary if you want it to sound not awkward, especially with voice acting.
Yeah. So, John, I don't know if John's ever talked about for 13 on the show. Where do you stand on 13? Did you enjoy it?
All right, so it's not that I enjoyed or didn't enjoy Final Fantasy 13. It's that Final Fantasy 13 just doesn't have anything to make me give a crap about it. It's the battle system's fine. I mean, the characters are okay, but there's no impetus for me to keep playing. It's not like, oh man, I want to find out what happens next, or oh man, I'm having a lot of fun with this battle system, or oh wow, I really like the music. It's just kind of like, well, this game is here.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. Yeah,
and
I kind of agree with that. That's sort of how I felt. Like, I played it because I've beaten the majority of the other Final Fantasies, and I felt like, all right, well, it's part of that series. I should probably finish this.
Yeah, I think it's a noble experiment. I mean, I'm glad that Final Fantasy 13 came out. I'm glad that it exists. I think that, Japanese game development really did have a hard transition into the HD era. I think it was somebody on 1UP wrote an article about how, some of the big Japanese franchises really struggled going to the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, because they just didn't realize how much time it was going to take to develop these games. And so now we're starting to see them get their act together. And I think, with 13.2, what we keep hearing is, we listen to your complaints about the lack of an overworld, about the linear dungeon design, about the no towns, and we've addressed those. And right away in the demo, and this is me being positive, right away in the demo for 13.2, you see that, yes, you are in fact in a town, and you can move around, and you don't just have to go down a straight linear path. Good for you guys. It's like, okay, you listened to that complaint.
My thing with it is that I'm glad they listened to all the complaints, and I think I read this on, I can't remember who wrote it. Someone on the internet wrote it. And they said, the game is great. They addressed all the gameplay complaints, but the thing that made all the old Final Fantasies the most memorable for me, I don't think back to Final Fantasy IX, my favorite one, and go, oh man, I remember when I learned that ability, and it was so awesome. I remember all the moments with the characters and the plot moments that were really significant, like when Zidane has his crisis of faith or whatever, and all the characters bust out and help him in a battle. That's what I remember. And Final Fantasy, in my opinion, 13 is completely devoid of those moments.
Mm-hmm. That's actually what I'm worried about for 13 too.
You know, you have when what's his face, the annoying kid, forgives the butthead.
Yeah, but he forgives him for saving his life. It's like, oh, I'm sorry that my mom died, but you saved my life doing so, or something. I remember. Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. Like that entire arc just seemed very forced.
No, I hear you.
And it was like an excuse to get hope
I was
with
actually
someone.
being sarcastic.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think he meant that.
Teehee.
I like the part when the music swells when you first fight Odin and lightning saves him. And like it plays that awesome song.
I like the cinematics of it, but I feel like the same way, like where there has to be something with the writing that kind of connects you, makes you care. I am not trying to, I'm worried about 13.2 that it's going to be a lot like 13 where we don't really latch on to those characters. And when I first saw that the game had been announced and that they were using Lightning's sister, she wasn't exactly a popular character in 13. Like, nothing really drew you into her. So if they can make her interesting and fun and give her depth in this game, great. I'm just a little scared.
I think
she was kind of a MacGuffin almost. Like, she was just like, oh yeah, she's here to give all the characters a reason to continue.
I think that in 10.2 she's going to end up being like
10.2?
Or 13.2. My point is related to 10.2. In 13.2 she's going to end up being like 10.2's Yuna, where there might be a character under there that actually matters, but we're going to pile on a bunch of other crap.
That's what I think is going to happen. And I'm curious as to how big of a role Lightning actually will have in 13.2. There's all this speculation going on, but what I want to know is how they're going to bring these characters back and make some of them that did not matter into 13 as much to people matter in 13.2. And add in, like, Noel, who does not seem to have, there's just no spark. I don't know how to explain. Like, I'll watch the trailers and certain thing, and there's nothing that, like, draws me in, and that worries me.
But this is an issue I actually, it's something that happens with sci-fi a lot. And sci-fi is great, and I consider 13 to be sci-fi, less so than fantasy. All that spectacular stuff is great, like Fal'Cie and all these crazy summons and wonderful graphics and insane drama. But the characters are hollow, and there's no human struggle there in the plot or with any of the characters. Like, there's no struggle you can relate to and say, okay, this is why these characters are acting this way. Like, they just seem to do things because that's what the plot calls for them to do. And it completely makes it impossible for me to engage with them.
See, I agree with you completely there. One of my favorite shows on television is Warehouse 13. And even though Warehouse 13 is about all this crazy crap going on, it's the characters are very relatable. You know, you got one of the guys who's, you know, an alcoholic, and it's everything is very, very believable when it comes to the individual characters.
But don't you think that, you know, maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but I think that there was some drama in Final Fantasy 13 that I could relate to, like Snow losing his wife. Like that, and that's very early on in the game, so please don't everybody give me a spoiler crap for that. But like, Jesus God, it's in like the first 5 minutes of the game. But like, Snow losing his love, like, I think that's relatable, but I think the scenario and his reaction to it is where we have the dissonance, because his reaction to it is, I'm going to be the hero. It's not remorse. It's not like he becomes pissy or he, you know, gets like Cloud in 7 and he's pissed. Like, he's just like, I'm going to go on an adventure and be a hero. And it's like dude, I feel like I would be mortified if like my girlfriend got turned into a crystal. Like, I would just lose my S. Like, I would be completely like inconsolable. I would actually react more like Hope. The problem is that Hope is completely unlikable.
See, that's the thing, too. Like, there are struggles in there, but the problem is that they feel so hollow. Like, everything feels contrived by the plot. Like, Snow has to get that attitude because he has to be the one that pushes them forward, so that way they don't all just sit around and whine all day. And Hope has to get angry because otherwise he can't unleash his summon. And it seems like things happen just because that's, all right, well, we wrote this has to happen here. There's no organic flow to it. And, I guess, again, having played Radiant Historia recently, I feel like that's such a better example of, like, I'm not going to spoil it because it's still relatively new, but when you get to the end, the main character has to make a decision, and when he makes it, you completely understand why he's making it. And, it has to do with, all the people he knows and everything he's doing. And when he does it, you can sympathize with it. Because you're like, all right, yeah, I've been here with him this entire game. I understand why he's thinking this because we came to this conclusion together. Whereas in 13, it's like, oh, yeah, Snow's mad at Hope because he saw something that he didn't like or something, but I guess. And he's mad at Lightning because I don't know, something happened.
I think that when you deal with the fantastical, and that's what Final Fantasy is. I mean, it's dealing with these fantastic scenarios and, these very science fiction themes and whatnot. You have to make the core of the character experience relatable. And exactly. I think back to let's take since I believe that Final Fantasy has become more like anime in recent years, especially with 13. I think that the one that I would compare it to is like Evangelion. Evangelion on the surface is about giant robots fighting to prevent evolution. Like, that is the most basic idea. But underneath all that are characters that are dealing with very real issues. You have Shinji dealing with abandonment issues from losing his mother and having a distant father. You have Asuka, who also has family issues. You have
insane.
Well, yeah, and these are all relatable problems that we can understand, and
that
so
regular people have.
Right, they have regular people problems that then we root for them when they get into their giant robots and start beating the crap out of things. We root for them
because you understand why they're doing that.
Right, and so I feel like the beginnings of that were in 13. The problem was that the character reactions were so over the top or so not in line with what we as human beings, the real way we would react, that then it just creates a problem between the viewer and the actual moments happening on the screen, where I'm just sitting there going, well, I wouldn't have reacted like that. Like, good Lord, what is going on here? Like, I don't know. I think that the fundamental storytelling, if I compare, let's look at Cyan in Final Fantasy VI. Like, he loses his family.
He loses everything.
His
entire castle gets poisoned by the bad guy.
And we relate to him, and then he has a moment where he has to say goodbye to his family. And, like, that is an emotional moment, and those 16-bit sprites were able to illustrate that better than Snow, basically just saying, well, my girlfriend's a crystal. Guess I gotta go save the world now.
A more recent example, too, and I'm only doing this to mess with Rob, I guess. But
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go.
No, I just think that to play off what you guys are saying, though, I want to know how you guys felt about Chocobo and Hairman Sav in Final Fantasy 13, because I actually just got to a part, recently in the game, and I thought he had the most realistic reaction.
Yes, I agree.
From any character in the game. I felt like they got that one right, because that is exactly how I would have reacted if somebody did that to my, we'll just say, if I had a child, okay?
Actually, I'm going to backpedal a little here. I completely agree. I forgot about Saz. Mm-hmm. I played the game when it first came out in Japanese, and even without being able to fully understand everything, because, at the time my Japanese wasn't that great. It still isn't, but I digress. You could see just from, what was happening that he seemed to be reacting differently to the other characters, and in English, his was the only Eidolon fight that came out, and you're like, oh my god, I understand why this guy is super pissed at Vanille. Mm-hmm. This guy, and her reaction to that was actually fairly realistic too. There was remorse, and you got that was the most dramatic moment in the game, and then it's like it drops off the face of the earth.
Yeah, and see, I didn't get to that point in 13.
Oh, you didn't get that far.
I didn't get that. I think I put in about 10 hours. And
that was the one scene, because I just had recently hit it, and it just I was like, wow, if more of this was going on, then I could understand, because it was such a realistic response and just the emotions and the energy going on in that scene. And I think you're right, Rob. With Snow, you're like, well, he's here to play a role. I don't think that we saw a reaction that necessarily would take. I know everybody wants revenge on what's going on, and that's realistic in its way, but that one just felt so real. So if they could have maybe done more in that vein, we would have been fine. But
go ahead, Steven. I didn't want to interrupt.
And that actually affected, when you're playing the game at that moment, too. You're sitting there, you're like, oh, my God, I'm totally with this guy. So when the fight starts, you're like, oh, man, I understand, why, you got into the fight. For me, you get more engaged in the fight. You're more invested in its outcome because you actually care. Because you're like, this guy got totally boned and he's pissed.
And I think it's the first time I actually got mad. I was like, Vanille, how could you? It's just that whole scene and everything that happens, you just actually, that was one part. I won't say I didn't care ever, but the game started to pull me in. Now, Steven, you finished the whole thing and you said it kind of drops off after that, though. They don't have much going on with that scene.
They develop more with with Saz's stuff, but the problem is the game gets so wrapped up and we have to save the world that most of the other character moments are pretty much relegated to a couple minutes in the ending.
Gotcha.
So now to get back to 13.2, do we just based off of my limited time? I mean, all I've done is play the demo. Once again, I find that I have no connection with these characters, but is that coming as a result of the fact that I didn't finish Final Fantasy 13, or is that we still have this continued problem? Now, Steven, you're the only one that finished it, so I mean, apparently they're going to put a glossary in the game. They're going to put like a previously on Final Fantasy 13 to get people ready.
The overall story of the game is actually pretty simple. I read a synopsis, and I think I'm fully prepared to go into the game.
Okay.
It's not like it's incredibly complicated. I think that's actually something that it's a failure in the original game, is that because these cutscenes are so difficult to produce and that sort of thing, Japanese companies haven't come to terms with being able to tell a story without cutscenes. And I hope that there's something that they can get better at, because I've seen a lot of Western games that are able to tell story while you're playing, where you get dialogue sequences, you get things that are happening while you're playing. Yeah. And there were some of those, like you got little bits when they talk to each other as you're running around, but it never really told a part of the story. I think if they get better at that, and I'm hoping that's something that happens in 13.2, that they'll really succeed.
Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. I felt like the demo didn't really show any storytelling that much and didn't go into that much with the story or characters. So I walked away from that demo just looking at all that they've improved gameplay wise, and I have right now no opinion on the characters or story, because I feel like I didn't get enough from it.
All we know is, oh my god, you can time travel, or you can shift dimensions, and holy crap, there's a giant invisible hand man.
I mean, I have my worries for 13, but the demo didn't really give us much to go off. Like, we didn't have any banter between the two characters, between Sarah and Noel or anything. We didn't have any good, a lot of lengthy scenes or anything, so...
I have to admit, the first thing you read in the game kind of made me laugh and how ridiculous it sounded. After battling a gigantic arm.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, guys, I can't take you seriously if you're going to write crap like that.
I'm so glad that John pointed out the cutscene thing, because I've been going back and I've been playing older games lately with a lot of cutscenes, and I am realizing that I'm kind of over cutscenes. I loved them. Back in the day, I remember watching the original cutscene for Resident Evil 2 and just losing my mind. But to me, go ahead, John.
The cutscene has changed, though. It's not in Final Fantasy 13 it is. It's not necessarily, boom, we're going to take you out of everything. Here's going on. A lot of them are done with in-game engines now. Actually, even though you're losing all control, you're not doing anything, the cutscenes in 13.2 are all done with the in-engine as opposed to the previous game, which were rendered.
Mm-hmm. And I just feel like cutscenes are becoming the absolute worst way to tell a story, and I think we're getting spoiled with that in Western RPGs, where we have characters that are talking directly to me. I mean, when you're Shepard, you're participating in the cutscenes, you're answering questions, you're asking things.
See, but I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off.
No. Let me just finish up the point real quick. When I'm just watching a cutscene, when I'm just watching characters, flitter about the screen, and I watch this amazing action, and I'm like, I'm kind of over that. And maybe I've changed as a gamer, but I kind of start to shut down now when I see a cutscene. I'm not interested. I want to be a part of the story. I don't want to be – this gets to the editorial that I wrote about Final Fantasy 13 versus The Witcher. Not to pimp my own material again, but I felt so much more a part of The Witcher's world than any of the gorgeousness going on in Final Fantasy 13, because the extent of my participation in that game is setting up battle formations. I'm not doing anything.
I don't necessarily agree with that last comment, but I do agree. There's so much spectacular stuff happening and so much implied drama that you're almost like, all right, okay.
I think that the main difference here is not necessarily how cutscenes work, but there's a difference between you get in most Japanese RPGs, they're telling their story. They're telling the story of these characters.
This is
And in most Western RPGs, they're telling your story. Your Shepherd, your Hawk, your Fusro Dagai. Like that.
Can I also, sorry. I just want to go back to something now that you bring up like Western RPGs and how you have choices going on through it. I'm actually really concerned about choice now that they've added it into 13.2 because I have a feeling that it's not going to really matter. And I was telling John when I played the demo and I was going through, I accidentally triggered a battle when I meant to go do another way to get around the battle. And I went into it and I died like right in one hit right away. And I had a choice wheel and I had picked to go a different route to do it to try to see if I could control the machine, right? So then I went and I controlled the machine and then I did the battle and of course it was easy to beat. So my whole question was when I went through that, was the only way to beat that battle to have done that? Or was there another way? Or am I forced, even though I'm making a choice, I'm forced into the right way? Like that's what I'm worried about happening in 13.2.
What I think is going to happen is that it's going to be as opposed to A or B, this is a branching path. You go one way or another, like you see in a lot of games. Tactics Ogre is like that, where it's got 8 different endings where you go one way or you go the other. I think it's going to be a kind of a side questy thing where it's, do you want to go and do extra stuff? This will give you X or Y. Yes, no. I don't think it's going to be like, do you want to... It's not going to be like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, where it's like, do you want to kill this guy or do you want to let him go? This might have repercussions later. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, okay, do you want to go over here or do you want to go over here and then come back over here?
Well, you could go with this, or you could go with that, and you could go with this, and you could go with that.
Well, see, that's what I hate, though. I hate when you get choices and they don't like. If you're gonna give me choice in a game, have it affect like the outcome of what's going to happen in some sense. Or like in Deus Ex, I pick which way I want to take down an enemy, but that's still my choice in how I want to go about it. I could go around the enemy or I could just go flat at them. Like I didn't like when I did the demo, what I got concerned with was if I went straight to try to take the guy down myself, like I don't know if that battle is possible to beat because it was like one hit and my team was dead. So that's kind of what I'm saying because it looks like you had a choice to rush right in.
Yeah, as long as there are no dialogue sequences that go, do you want to do this? Yes, no, and you select no, and it's like, no, that's the wrong answer, and sends you back to that dialogue, I'll be happy.
Or what about the main complaint in Battlefield 3 was that there's certain scenes where you have to like murder someone or you have to do it in this specific time. If you try to walk out of the room, you just fall dead. It's like somebody literally yanked your matrix cord and you just fall dead because you're not doing exactly what the game wants you to do. Like what's the point in having that then?
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
It's like implied choice. But anywho, like
that reminds me of Metal Saga and Patrick's review of it. Where at the very beginning of the game, they ask you, do you want to go on an adventure or do you want to stay home and have a family? And Patrick picks, I want to stay home and have a family, and it gives him a game over screen.
I do like it when games do that. But so let's talk more about 13.2. I mean, first off, Square Enix's presentation is beautiful. I mean, I love the menus. I love the music, for what I heard of it. The graphics are good, although I really think that the rain graphics in that opening area look horrid. Like it just looks like streaks. Like it like really, guys, like this looks awful. Like Metal Gear Solid 2 had better rain. Got my Metal Gear reference in. It looks terrible, but like the character designs look good. I mean the monsters look like monsters. I mean their presentation is still good.
It's okay, Rob. I can take over if you want.
The presentation looks good.
Oh, go ahead. I will let you.
No, I was just going to say, you know what? For my impression of the demo is that they did a lot of things that I liked with the gameplay. I think that the monsters in the party was great because I for once didn't have to rely on a party member to heal, because once I got a monster that could heal, he took care of all of that. I like the side quests. the Crystalterium when you were expanding it. Now, if you go up a level, you can choose to like do a bonus stat boost or unlock a new class or increase your ATB gauge.
Can I stop you right there, because that really scares me. Like,
Why is it scary that you could screw up somehow?
Yes, the Crystarium scared the crap out of me, because as soon as the first thing I could upgrade for each of my characters, it was like, do you want to upgrade Ravager? Or do you want to upgrade Medic? And I'm like, oh my god, you're doing that Western RPG thing where I might break my whole party.
I doubt that. You know, you honestly get to most of these JRPGs where you're pretty set within a couple of levels of what you want this character to be. Now, I haven't played more than a demo, but from the idea that I get from the game is that you only have these two characters. You don't get other folks. So
Yeah.
So
the monster actually becomes then your third party member.
Yeah,
and I think that they're giving you the freedom because you can make your two characters however you want, but it's also where it's not gonna be like Western RPGs where you play Fallout, you're gonna be the guns guy until you maxed out guns, then you focus on energy weapons or anything. It's going to be, well, I need to put some points into medic so I have somebody who can heal. I need to have some points into Ravager so I can have somebody who can cast magic. I need some points in Commando for physical.
Right, and as long as you can still grind for levels in the game, then yeah, like if you haven't been upgrading your medic stat enough, then maybe you can go somewhere and just, beat on enemies for a while. But still, like, that did really scare me, because like the biggest problem I had, the most fundamental problem I have with 13 is I don't like the battle system. I don't like the lack of control over the battle system. So now I am picking the abilities that my characters are going to use rather than picking those abilities and then choosing them in battle. So I'm once again relying on that wonderful AI system to run the battle system for me.
You spoke a little bit before the podcast when before we started about how you felt the AI was bad, and I think that the battle system was actually pretty good.
I agree.
I like the AI. There were some times where it did things that weren't good.
Yeah, it wasn't often. I'll agree to that.
But most of the time it was, okay, I can focus on what I want to do, and I can focus on changing the paradigm so that my party is doing the right thing as opposed to this character is doing the right thing.
I get the point of the battle system. I do, and it's an interesting battle system, and I like the fact that it feels like you're changing tempos. I very much equate it to music, where it's like this is the real crazy part where I got to make sure that I get all my health back up, and then we're going to slow the tempo down a little bit by using some sentinel skills. Like I do like it from an idea standpoint. It's just that it goes against everything that I look for in a game, where I'm all about player control. I'm all about being able to pick my destiny, but
See, and I think that we actually had Dave say to Rob, well, this is kind of like being a coach. I think that you can choose.
I was a coach.
I think that you can choose what your party is doing, but it's a overarching control. It's okay. I want you guys to be this combination of things. I want you guys to be that combination of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it succeeds at this.
Mm-hmm. And plus, at least it's giving you a choice now if you want to flee from battles, so you're not stuck in them if you get caught. Because that was a big thing with me in 13. Sometimes I just didn't want to fight, and now I have the option to flee if I get lost or I'm looking around. And preemptive strikes are a lot easier to get as well, which I thought it was. You could do it in 13, but you had to be really sneaky about it. So I don't know. How did you guys feel about the temporal rifts in it?
I still don't understand them.
I didn't like it because I'm not a puzzle person, but once I figured it out, I was able to do it, but I worry that it's something that I won't like as the game goes on. I mean, it's a good break from the actual, combat and everything else. It's something different, but I don't know if it's not your thing, I could see like it just not really clicking with anyone.
I could see somebody not liking it. I thought it was really great, but I like stuff like that.
But you like puzzles and stuff. Like, I'm not a big puzzle person because I'm very much like, I want to get through things as fast as possible, and I don't like to sit there and stand and think. But I mean, none of them were too hard yet, but I worry as the game gets on, like, you could spend a lot of time figuring out exactly where you need to step. I mean, I don't know how they're going to get in difficulty, but that was about the only thing from the demo that I was kind of like, I don't know. And the side quests, the only thing that bothers me with the side quests, I'm worried that they're going to be and this has always been in Final Fantasy, so don't get me wrong, I just don't like it, just a little bit too much fetch questy and not enough, like, I like side quests if they flesh out, like, certain parts of the story or add something. You know how I'm just not a big fan of fetch quests, so.
I had a similar concern, although, to be honest, I'm kind of expecting to see some fetch quests and then some meaningful quests. Probably less in number than the fetch quests, but that seems to be, that was the trend that happened in Xenoblade, for example. Xenoblade had a crap load of very easy fetch quests that you could do just by being there, but it also had some really meaningful quests that fleshed out the characters in town and you improved your relationships with people.
I find it interesting that when people talked about 13, the thing that I saw in just about every review was, we don't like the fact that the game's really slow, it has really bad pacing, we don't like the story, we don't like the characters, but we like the battle system. And so I think that what the main focus that they've done is they've fixed, having the straight linear path, you don't have that anymore, and they've really focused on making the game more interactive and adding things like side quests to make it feel more like a traditional Final Fantasy. Mm-hmm. And I think from that, if those were your major issues with 13, then I think you'll like 13 too. But if your major issue with 13, which for me was the battle system, I don't think there's anything that this game can do.
If you didn't like the battle system, you're not going to go into this and really have it change your mind.
It's the exact same battle system.
Yeah.
They've spiced it up. I do like the idea of recruiting monsters. I think that's a cool idea. But to me, it's still that really tedious, stagger. Enemies have insane number of hit points. To me, I don't like it. I don't like the battle system, but I respect it. It isn't my cup of tea, so it's not going to change my mind. That's my 2 cents on it.
I think that's true. If you didn't like the battle system, you won't. But that was always kind of the point of this. And it actually brings up an issue I have with some sequels, especially from Japanese games lately. And it's like reactionary game design. This is actually one of the reasons I didn't like Twilight Princess. I felt like it was just, okay, they didn't like we changed things, so we're just going to make super dark Ocarina of Time. And,
I love Twilight Princess.
How do you feel about the game? That's fine, but I really strongly feel that the design in Twilight Princess and how dark it was a result of how many people had backlash against the very, very whimsical look of Wind Waker. And I feel like 13.2 is similar in a way, because people complained about certain aspects, and those very vocal people were the ones they listened to. So they've added, it's less linear. They've added tweaks to the battle system, which I think they've enhanced quite a bit. Being able to change characters. The monster system seems very in-depth, and I could see that being almost Shin Megami Tensei in its, your compulsion to make the most awesome monsters. And everything seems great, but it seems like I'm not getting a sense that this is what Square Enix wanted to do. It was what they wanted to do to make a game that would sell more copies. And obviously that's the goal. But I feel like when you have reactionary game design like that, you lose passion from the developers. And that's the vibe I got from the story. Ever since I saw that it was a time travel story, I kind of felt like they were throwing everything out the window from 13 and just being like, well, this is easy, let's do this. It lets us be totally random in everything. And that's not what 13 needed, because 13 was hard enough to relate with. So...
Well, I think it's going to be, if you had problems with certain aspects of 13 and you wanted to see a more traditional Final Fantasy game with, side quests and that sort of thing, I think you'll really enjoy 13 too. But I think if you fundamentally didn't like the battle system, you really have no reason to play this game. I don't think. Like, it isn't going to change your mind.
That's true.
And it didn't change my mind, and that,
But I feel like that's not what they're aiming for. They're not aiming to really change your mind. They're aiming to please the people who did enjoy 13 but had a lot of complaints about it.
Right. They've made their decision. They know what they want the 13 franchise, because, this isn't a spoiler to say, but apparently there's a giant to be continued at the end of 13.2, so there's probably going to be a 13.3.
What?
I don't like that. Yeah, that makes me upset. That's like
they've never
that?
done something like that before. So that kind of is like, we got 10-2, so we are used to having, a direct sequel. That wasn't anything new. But if they're gonna follow this up with then a third game, I don't know. I don't think 13 has the dedication to characters like other Final Fantasies had for them to really do that. And unless they really change the storytelling in 13.2 and make characters that people can really connect with, I don't think many people will be itching to play another game in the series.
Yeah, and I feel too like that's just. I don't feel like the world is, like you said, interesting enough to warrant having that. Like, there are very few games I would sit through a third sequel for. Mass Effect, I'm involved in it, so sure, but when you only have
it just seems weird for 13 to do it. Like, it just seems like that's the cast. I never hear people really talking about the cast as passionately as other Final Fantasy games. So it seems like a really interesting decision to decide this is the cast we should, maybe possibly go into a third game on, which is something that they've never done before. So
it's absurd to me that a game like 13 is going to get 2 sequels, and Final Fantasy 7, which people have been whining about a sequel or a remake forever.
You got one. You got Crisis Core.
Yeah.
They got
I want to hear that.
Crisis Core is awesome.
That was
spin-offs though.
It wasn't Final Fantasy 7. It wasn't Final Fantasy 7-2. It was Final Fantasy 7-1.
But
and it was better than Final Fantasy 7. But I digress.
You say spin-off, but Final Fantasy 13-2 seems more like a spin-off than a direct sequel. Same with Final Fantasy 10-2. It's not like, oh yeah, we're going to continue the same tone or even the same kind of plot thread. They were just kind of like, let's have a bunch of crazy crap in this world.
Yeah, that's why I stayed the hell away from 10-2.
Hey, now. 10-2 wasn't so bad.
The final battle song in 10-2 is off the chain.
Yeah, no, I like that battle.
I enjoy how Steven's first argument for just about every game is whether or not the soundtrack was good.
He's the soundtrack guy.
Yeah, he wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't.
Yeah, come on, John.
I gotta pimp out good soundtrack. Speaking of which, I think I'm gonna get an Amalur soundtrack review. Woo!
Ooh, cool. So I guess 13-2, what we're saying is, good on Square Enix for trying, to please the fans, but I think it is a reactionary move. I 100% agree with Steven on that. Do we think I don't like to do the prediction thing on how is it going to sell, but I think it is important to talk about because apparently the sales numbers in Japan not so good.
My thing with that. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I think it's going to do well enough. Do I think it's going to be spectacularly well selling? No, but it's going to be good enough.
Well, and they're also reusing assets. Let's be honest here, assets that they created for Final Fantasy 13.
Well,
they admitted as much.
To be honest, it took them not even half the time to make this game and to turn it around. So I mean, it doesn't need to sell as well. Like, it wasn't as important for this to sell a crap load of copies as it was for 13 because there was so much more time invested in that. So a smaller number of sales may still be a successful release.
It's all about return on investment, and when you get a game like what's Atlas released lately, Devil Summoner or Devil Survivor 2 that's coming out a little bit later this month or next month. This is still January. Devil Survivor is probably going to only have to sell, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 30,000 copies for that to be successful for them, maybe more. Because they don't have a huge budget on it, they don't need to return. That maybe it'll be a little bit low, but regardless, they don't need to have a million seller on their DS RPG that doesn't have voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not like Gears of War where they drop $1 zillion on it in a huge marketing campaign, and they need to sell 1 million copies to break even.
It's like when you look at the Zavoid games, Cthulhu Saves the World and Breath of Death 7. They've sold something like 100,000 copies, but that is an amazing success for them. That I pulled that number out of my butt. I have no idea what they've sold, but I think it's around there.
But I know what you're saying. I mean, I don't think Square Enix has to sell nearly as many copies to make an investment on it. I think that Square Enix has some decisions to make coming up. What are we going to do with Final Fantasy Versus 13? I mean,
what I'm hoping is they learn more from their Western developers, and they learn. I was reading an article somewhere not so long ago where they were learning things like focus groups and other things.
Yeah, I read that article too. Yeah.
Where
I read that. Sorry, I read that.
Yeah, things that they're learning from IDOS and the companies that they've acquired from the West that I think that they can use to be successful. I think that one thing that some RPG fans will be unhappy with is that will probably mean that the types of saga games that come out will be slim to none. You won't have. I don't know if Front Mission is coming back. I doubt it. They made a westernized one. I really would like a Front Mission 6, but
I have this vision of like the Square Enix guys all sitting down for a group meeting with Eidos, and Eidos shows Deus Ex: Human Revolution, and Tetsuya Nomura looks over and goes, "Leather jackets and shades, we got that covered."
Leather jackets and shades,
we got that. We got. Oh, you mean focus group? Oh yeah. We could work on that.
That's actually something that I've been thinking a lot about Square Enix lately. Their games are so different than what they used to be, and I don't know how I feel about it. Excuse me.
I know how.
Because even I love the Kingdom Hearts games, but everything is becoming like, and again, I may draw some ire for saying this, but everything's becoming like hyper fabulous, fashionable, super pretty, like plasticky, just beautiful colors and crazy presentation, but no soul.
I don't necessarily.
Not every game, but I feel like that everything is getting a little more towards the absurd side of storytelling.
No, I think that anything that Tetsuya Nomura has his hands in is kind of the absurd side of storytelling.
It's almost a story to communicate the stuff he wants to do in the gameplay, and then they try to keep taking the story seriously.
Let's real quick just to get a barometer. What is everyone's favorite Square Enix story? Just from any Squaresoft or Enix or Square Enix title. What's your favorite story? For me, it's Vagrant Story. Vagrant Story was so ahead of its time in terms of cinematography, in terms of ideals. That to me is the essence of soul in a video game story.
I want to beat that. I always want to beat that.
That game is phenomenal. And that storyline, like, even just the way it's shot, just the way it actually uses conventional camera tricks to, like, hide ghost characters and stuff. It's awesome. It's beautiful. And then when I watch the cacophony of just insanity with Final Fantasy 13 and 13-2, like, my brain, you know what I equate it to? When you watch the Transformers movies and you just see metal and just churning and violence and just explosions, and your brain literally can't comprehend what you're watching. That's how I feel when I watch a cutscene in 13-2 or 13, where my brain, and with the battle system too, my brain cannot comprehend what's going on screen.
I'll support your point, but I do want to answer your question too. My example for it has always been the older Final Fantasies are the older Star Wars movies. The newer Final Fantasies are the newer Star Wars movies. Maybe there's not as much of a gross difference, but the newer Star Wars movies were not focused on telling a close character plot. They were focused on showing you a lot of pretty crap, and the threads that held together weren't exactly there.
I 100% agree.
I think that I want to talk about the battle system and how you say it's big and flashy. One thing that I found interesting is that regardless of how big and flashy it is, I don't think I ever noticed that stuff, because much like in World of Warcraft, I was looking just at the numbers that were popping up. And I was looking at the bars. I was looking at the meters. I really didn't care what animations were going on. I was looking at the nuts and bolts of what was happening. Same thing with WoW. I can't remember what half the raid bosses in WoW that I killed looked like. I remember what I needed to do, and I remember the numbers, and I remember the nuts and bolts of things.
So how do you deal with Final Fantasy 13 then? Because like Final Fantasy 13 is just insanity in terms of numbers and meters and craziness.
His point was to go against that.
In Final Fantasy 13, it's still pretty obvious where you are and what you need to do. I think that even though there's a layer of a bunch of crazy stuff, there's still at the core, there's the information that needs to get to you, and it's easily available to you.
I agree. I don't necessarily agree with Rob's criticism that there's so much going on you can't focus. Because when I played 13, I was very rarely even looking at the battle. I mean, honestly, you probably could have cut the graphics out of it and just kept the numbers and where the enemies were on the screen, and I would have been fine, because very rarely do you have a moment where you can stop controlling things and just stare at the pretty graphics, because if you do, you'll be dead within a couple of seconds.
Yeah, and I think that's where I don't care. I feel like all I'm doing is watching the meters, and if I try to watch the actual battle system, all I'm seeing are numbers flying off that have no meaning to me. One thing I did want to point out about 13 too, am I the only one that saw that occasionally the heal spells weren't working? Because I would get healed, like the character would heal Noel, and they would cast 2 heal spells on him, and he would heal for 230 each time, and only one 230 would show up.
Interesting. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I was like, shouldn't 230 plus 230 be 460? And I only went up 230, and I didn't get attacked again. I'm having that flashback to Final Fantasy 12 where all my action bars filled up on my cure spells, and the game didn't load, and so I ended up dying on the last boss. Because they just didn't fire off their cure spells. I was like, why? It was 5 minutes of the boss wailing on me, and none of my guys curing themselves.
Well then, sounds like your PS2 is broken.
PS2 or PS3, both possibly.
Well, actually, PS3. Final Fantasy 12 did have that recognized flaw where, like, if a move was loading, other moves couldn't load.
Yeah, but sometimes the enemies could still wail on you.
Yeah, really that was more of a technical limitation, but I agree it was frustrating. Especially the final boss had a lot of moves where he would wind up and be doing something, and you'd be like, heal please, and all your guys would be like, nope.
Yeah, nope. So, do we want to talk about 10-2, or we're kind of running like into an hour here? So do we want to talk about the dress spheres and the dancing and the?
We can talk for a little bit. I know that Kimberly has stuff to say, but I don't think the rest of us have a wide breadth of things to say about it. We'll go off on tangents.
That's fine.
No,
Well, I mean, I beat it, so.
Yeah, no, I think we all beat it.
Yeah. I didn't even play it.
Okay, well, the rest of us all beat it.
We'll leave you up.
Yeah, it's been years since I played, though.
No, I'll tell you guys why a lot of people dislike 10-2, because I mean it was a little ridiculous. You started the game off and suddenly it was like Yuna was a part of the Spice Girls on stage, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? But somebody's gonna make a wave of that, anyways.
All I had to see was the commercial, and I was like, nope.
No, but here's why I appreciated 10-2. I feel like in 10 we had a really dark story for Yuna. When people died, she had to dance, she had to take on that huge plate, everything with it. I felt like I got to 10-2 and suddenly I had a Yuna who was saying words like disasterific and everything else, which was like a complete, I mean, you can say it was just a complete, like, you know what? I rather see her like that than so sad like she was in 10. It was a nice change of place. And I think what I liked about 10-2 is like a girl's night out. Like, it was just fun. It was silly. And I appreciated it for what it was. It'll be interesting to see what they do actually connecting this with 13-2, if they do have a little more fun with it than they did with, which I doubt, though.
Chocolina!
There you go.
My.
It's already starting.
Song. Rob, you cannot take issue with Chocolina. Japanese RPGs have had weird, quirky characters forever. I was yelling at people on the boards about this. Like, people like, she's so weird. And I'm like, so are the 2 gay guys that sold you gay trading cards in Shadow Hearts, but we love that game.
We love them.
I actually did like them, too.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So everyone's argument is null.
I think what 10-2...
I think that you're using Shadow Hearts as an example of, hey, this is normal. Kind of way off there.
Yeah, that's true. I think 10-2 just didn't. I really like 10. I have watched the Spoonie Experiment videos on it, and yes, the story is a tad bit ridiculous. I love the counter on the number of times that Yuna is kidnapped. But I liked the game. I adore that game's battle system. I absolutely adore it. But 10-2, like, even though I was intrigued by the battle system, I kind of liked the fact that it was going to be a return to active time battles. Just the tone of that game, like, Kim, I understand that you like it, and I can respect a game that wants to go out there and have a girls' night out, but as a person who lives and breathes and would have a Dark Souls plush pillow if I could, I have no interest in that saccharine crap. Like, I have no interest in that. Like,
All right, well,
nothing.
Rob, you can go and listen to death metal and have your own party in Sweden in the snow or whatever.
Don't you give up on it.
Hey,
Another one awaits you.
Rob, I half agree with you, Rob, because I didn't really like. I thought it was a little ridiculous, but I didn't mind it. But
if Rob loves like death metal and stuff like that, how can he not love the Crazy Chocobo song?
It's just that, but at the same time, 10-2 was a glorious, like, I respect them for trying something so wildly and ridiculously different. Like, that was the Square Enix that I loved.
I think that's what I liked about it. I just liked that they took a complete chance, totally like went and embraced this girls' night out, like this little like ridiculous thing going on the whole game. Like, I didn't it was a nice break from 10. Like I said, 10 was super serious. Plus, I mean, if you got the perfect ending, we had a cute thing for our little love story between.
Oh my God, no! 10-2's super ending ruined it.
Though one thing,
super ending ruined the most meaningful part of all of 10. Like, the whole thing was about sacrifice, and 10-2's like, nope.
Well,
True
you
love
know, it was
fails.
just to please people because, you know, they were whatever, but I thought it was nice.
so one thing that I find interesting about the storytelling of 10-2, and this is a total tangent, but it always bothered me, is and this happened because they allowed you to name Tidus in Final Fantasy X. Every single piece of dialogue in 10-2.
The star player of the Xanarcanabes.
What?
What?
He's making fun of 10. Go ahead, John.
Oh, no. Where because you could name him, everything is done in him, he. Now, that's something that also happens in Japanese, where you tend not to talk to someone by their name.
Yeah.
Where it's, you know, it's he, him, or they use, you know, big brother, little brother, big sis, little sis, whatever, and they don't tend to refer to someone by name. But because they never refer to him as Tidus, he's just him, he, that guy, whatever.
That awesome blonde dude.
Yeah, and it really, really bothered me.
I actually agree. That was something in 10, actually, because you can name him. That's what I was joking about, is that they had to come up with all these ridiculous ways to refer to Tidus without actually saying his name. So they repeat, like, I remember a conversation at one point in the game where they referred to him at least 3 times as him, the star player of the Xanarcanabes. And I'm like, ugh.
Like, the game should have had a default option, or just name him.
What they've started doing now is they let you rename the character, but they just silence out the word of the name, or they just say the original name, but they have it say your name.
Well, what's funny is Mass Effect actually had a very good way of doing that. You could give your character in Mass Effect first name of whatever you wanted.
My guy's Ezekiel Shepard.
Your name is Shepard.
Ezekiel Shepard.
Yeah, my name's not a surprise.
Dwayne Shepard.
Taylor Shepard.
But I think 10-2, it kind of caught everybody by surprise. I mean, when they announced it, I was like, oh my God, they're making... I remember one of my favorite Final Fantasy fan sites back in the day. I don't think it exists anymore. It might have been FF Online. But they did an April Fool's joke one time where it was Final Fantasy 6-2. And I absolutely lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, Final Fantasy 6-2. Oh my, Shadow's back. I can't handle it. And then at the bottom it was like April Fool's. And I was like, oh, I hate everyone right now.
I don't want them to make that now.
Yeah, I don't want any kind of sequel to Final Fantasy VI. And I also don't know what everyone's obsession with Shadow was. But
Shadow was not that cool.
He was a ninja. He was a mysterious ninja that was Realm's father.
The best way to play that game was to just use Mog and Locke and then drop everybody else from your party.
But I think that it was so different when they announced 10-2. Like, I had that same reaction. I was like, wow, I really enjoyed 10. I'm really looking for why does Yuna have guns? Why is she wearing boy shorts?
She's fabulous.
What the hell is going? Who is this? Is that a female Squall? What the? What the hell?
Yeah, but she had the most interesting plot of any of the characters.
It's a female Squall. That's all it is.
Yeah, but she had the most meaningful plot developments in the entire story.
You know what we need? We need a goth chick in this game because, you know, we got the jailbait and we got the, like, fun-loving one. We need that goth chick that, you know, will do the really freaky stuff. That's what we need in this game.
We need Elizabeth Salander in this game.
Isn't there's a massage mini game in this game?
Yes, I was just going to mention that, Rob, actually.
The most awkward sounding mini game ever.
That mini game sucked if you were trying to get the perfect ending because you couldn't screw up like at all.
I think 10-2 is a noble experiment, and I'm glad it exists, but I'm also glad that I avoided it like the plague.
Rob, that's my favorite new phrase of yours. I'm glad it exists.
I'm glad it exists.
That's your way of saying I think this thing sucks, but I want to be diplomatic.
No, because I think that in order for games to get better, you have to go through some sucky ones. Like, there have to be mistakes.
Game, though.
Yeah, it's not. But I like when there are experiments. I like when people do new things.
Well, I like when they depart from what they usually do. We never got anything like that, and it was a little kooky. But you know what? I like stuff like that every so often. I don't always want really heavy stories and all this.
I'm so glad that Heavy Rain exists. I am. I really am, because that's such a cool idea. But, I don't like the game. I don't think it works. But am I glad that it exists? Do I want other people to try it? Do I want people to actually make a story that makes coherent sense? Yes.
I think we all have the games that are like, wow, this game is not something that's really in my wheelhouse, but I like it. Mm-hmm. Like, I have, Sid Meier's Railroads.
It's my God. Did you watch the video Zach sent us?
Oh, yeah, the epic railroad video.
Oh. Yes, I did, but that's not the point here. But you get Sid Meier's Railroads, which is one of the greatest strategy games that I've ever played, and I don't give a crap about railroads. It's like, in the West, the railroad spread. I don't care. The history of railroads, I don't care about the size models or whatever. Oh, so I'm sorry, scale HO.
What?
Okay.
I guess that's
John just lost
term.
everybody.
John just absolutely lost me.
We're all just like, huh?
No.
Got some knowledge on your ass.
Talking about how much I don't care about these things.
Oh, okay.
About scale models of trains.
I don't think anyone cared about
and confused all of us in the process.
When you mentioned trains, I think of Selfie in Final Fantasy VIII. She babbled on about trains all the time.
Oh, Oh, no.
Does anybody else think trains and just think Wild Arms? Like, that's what goes
Hell
in my
yeah.
head.
I can't whistle right now. Damn it.
But I think that they're the great games that do weird things, like Tecmo's Deception, and these games that go way off the beaten path.
You mean Tecmo's Deception Rob's eternal awesome dream of having a house filled with traps? Go ahead to the stairs, Stephen. There will wait something.
But I feel like those
you.
games are important because I feel like now, especially, we notice that people don't take many chances now in this generation because of the economy and everything else. And it's something that I know all of us are kind of longing for, something that's different and that doesn't really go by the book, steps outside the box.
Look,
I really wish there was more.
It seemed like Chrono Cross that didn't. Never mind. I was just going to make fun of people who don't like Chrono Cross. Sorry.
I love games like Magic Pendulum for the PS2 and the Magic Pendulum, the game where you just draw a bunch of things that look like penises and fight them against each other.
I think that's how you.
I remember that.
But do we think that Final Fantasy? This gets to Steven's point they made earlier. Do we think that Final Fantasy 13 too? It's a very reactionary move on Square Enix. Is this a safe move? And I think to a great extent, yes, it is. It's very easy for them to say, yeah, all those things that you didn't like about 13, but you love the battle system. Well, yeah, we did those. Go spend $60.
At some point, it is about creating a product that your fans will enjoy, and when your most vocal fans are saying how much they disliked the previous title, you go with what's going to sell. I'm very interested to see how this sells in North America.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost a bold move.
And I think it's going to sell well because I think people are very much, they want a console JRPG. I know just the other day I was saying to John, I just want to play a console JRPG, I miss it. I feel like I haven't found one this generation that really fits me, that I've really absolutely fallen in love with. And I think every time, I'll be getting that this
We're getting
year,
there.
sure. Yeah, we're getting there. But I'm just saying, when you think about it, we just want something that is just a JRPG to play. And we hope it takes us to that place. Like, there's always that hope. And I think you have people who are clinging to that and clinging to the Final Fantasy name because it brings them back to those, nostalgic moments in their past. So I think that, you slap Final Fantasy on it, you say you fixed the majority of what people said was broken in 13, and voila, I think it's going to sell well. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll get the numbers out and we'll see who is right, but I think it's going to sell pretty well.
I think, and this isn't just, please guys, don't take this as me just being cynical about the fact that I don't enjoy these two games. I really don't think it's going to sell well. I think it's a once bitten, twice shy type thing. I think a lot of people really weren't happy with 13. I don't see a lot of people picking this up. I think it'll do moderate, but I don't think it's going to be great.
I think a lot of people still have that lingering goodwill to Square Enix, though, and I think that most of us still believe they can make an awesome game, and I think that will drive people to buy this.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I hope it does, because I want Square Enix to come back. I want to see the experimental Square Enix of old. I want to see them trying new things. I want to see, is it wrong that the games that I'm most excited from coming out of Square Enix are from the guys that they bought? Like those are the games that I'm excited about right now. Like I'm excited for another Deus Ex. I'm not really excited for Final Fantasy. Used to be my favorite series. It was, guys. There was a young, youthful Rob Steinman that had hope and dreams and love for Final Fantasy, and he's just been smashed into oblivion.
I don't think that it has to do with being smashed into oblivion. I think it has to do with the fact that our tastes change over time. And I do think that I've said this before, I think that there's an inherent part of the average JRPG, and I say average because there are lots of games that eschew this, but the average JRPG is targeted towards a younger audience, an audience that's in their teens, an audience that is more willing to accept fantastical things.
Yeah. You might be right.
Sean hit it.
Well,
see, again, to bring up recent accomplishments, I feel like Radiant Historia hit a good balance with that, though. Sorry, guys.
I knew you were going there.
I'm really down with that game. Like that, I'm not going to go on about it, but the bottom line is, if you want to play an awesome JRPG, you should play that.
Okay. Well, I think we've talked a lot about Final Fantasy. I definitely want to do like a Final Fantasy retrospective at some point. It might take multiple podcasts, but it's such an important series, and I feel so strongly about it. I mean, I adore 6. 5 has a wonderful battle system, but I can't stand the story. 7 is just so bat crap crazy that I respect it. Years later, I must have played Final Fantasy 7 through like 5 times, and every time I play it, I'm like, this game is nuts. Like, it is so nuts.
Rob, I know that you don't follow me on Twitter, but when Wikipedia went dark a couple of days ago, I had a tweet that seemed to be pretty popular, which was it was fact while Wikipedia is down, and it was Final Fantasy VII was created in 8 days by Sakaguchi while he was on a bender.
But it's so nuts, and like 9. I adore 9 until the last CD, when, like most Final Fantasies, the story falls apart. Yeah. But you know what really does it for 9 for me?
Everything. I agree.
No, there's this really, really tiny moment in Final Fantasy 9, and it's right at the end of the game, so it is a slight spoiler, but a character.
Look, Final Fantasy 9 is like
I know
how old you can spoil.
Okay, it's when you think Zidane is dead. And he's not. It's the final cinematic of the game, and and Dagger runs down to him, and she hugs him, and then she punches him on the chest and just looks pissed at him.
And he just looks completely pleased with himself. He's like, "Yep."
I don't know what that moment has stuck out for me over everything else in Final Fantasy. That these two characters were so well developed. It is the exact same thing as Harrison Ford going in, Han Solo going into the Carbonite.
I know.
I know. That is that's when Final Fantasy got its characters perfect.
See, and I think we all have those moments. Like for me, the one thing that stands out is the sepia tone flashback in Final Fantasy VI, where Edgar's talking to Sabin about what's going to happen. And
that part was awesome.
They flipped the coin, and and like Final Fantasy X. I think 10's ending where Tidus leaves the group,
awesome.
That is amazing. And I agree with Steven. I think that should have been left alone, because that is such a fantastic ending.
That's actually why, in retrospect, I'm not as fond of 10-2 as I would have been, because I really felt like it trivialized everything that happened in 10, because the whole theme of the plot in 10 is sacrifice. Everybody is sacrificing something. And yet, at the end, it's like, oh, but don't worry, you'll get it back.
I think
Well, and that goes back with giving a happy ending or not. I think that sometimes it says more not to go the happy ending route. And I felt like, sometimes when you fix things up, but it was still nice to see the two together on screen. That's all I'm saying.
See,
Yeah,
I understand.
What's interesting about happy endings is I think that the stories that end up the best are those that where things are broken at the end, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, oh, everything is perfect again. It's, you know what, stuff happened, but we're going to be okay.
I agree, and I think that the movie that I'm most excited about this summer, Dark Knight Rises, I very much hope that it has the ending that John's talking about, where maybe Batman's crippled or dead, but Gotham is saved. I want that kind of ending, and I think that those are the things that we harp on. I know everyone says that I hate on JRPGs, and I love the fact that a moment between Dagger and Zidane, those two characters, that moment stands out for me more than anything in Skyrim, than anything in Deus Ex, and I feel like that's something that the JRPG has kind of lost its way a little bit, and I want to return to that. I want to return to characters that I feel like I know and are real to me. I felt like Cyan, Setzer, Mog, Locke, Terra, I felt like they were my buddies, they were my pals.
And one thing that we need to get to news because we're running over, but one thing that I liked about Final Fantasy VI is Final Fantasy VI had these characters that were really important to you, and they had these characters that were fantastic. And then they did have characters that were throwaway. You didn't need them. You had Umaro. Umaro,
Robin Williams.
Don't you dare say anything about Mog.
No. I'm saying Umaro exists as a character, not in the story, but as I'm a giant effing Yeti. I'm not going to take any commands from you. I'm just going to go around and do crazy stuff.
And if you have Mog in your party, I'm going to throw him at people.
Yeah,
and it was awesome.
But they still managed to have those characters that matter. I think that a lot of games, their kind of comic relief are in characters that are necessary to the plot.
Mm-hmm. Well,
like Zelda with hot dogs.
I definitely want to have a huge Final Fantasy retrospective. I want to get lots of people from the site on there, and we need to talk about Final Fantasy because I feel like it to me.
Honestly, Rob, we could record a podcast every day for 3 weeks. On Final Fantasy.
I think Final Fantasy, to me...
Why don't you take each game and have a podcast on it? That way you get people who are... I know there's some that aren't that great.
Because no one wants to talk about 2, and I can't...
And nobody wants to listen to me rant about...
Why don't you put all the ones that people don't want to talk about into one, and it can be one huge...
Okay. You can do 1, 2, 3, 5 on one podcast.
Well, as long as the problem is that then we're going to get to 8, and I'm just going to make a gurgling, choking sound for an hour and a half, and that.
Look,
all
right. We can spend eternity arguing about Final Fantasy, so I think that we should move on.
Okay, so first off, in news, public service announcement. We've talked a lot about it, so we didn't think that we needed to hit on it again.
Reckoning demo.
Yep, Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning demo is out. We have talked so much about this game that at this point we kind of felt like if we talked about the demo, we were just beating a dead horse. Go ahead.
On that note, I'm a huge fan of Kurt Schilling and a Red Sox fan, so if he wants to lavish special stuff on RPG Fan because we talked about it so much, signing the baseball for me, I'd be willing to accept that.
Well, go at this point, guys. Listeners, go play the game. It's out there.
Support new IPs.
Yes, support a new IP. Play it. Apparently, they're collecting thoughts. They want people to post on the message board. So I think that this is a development team that wants to make this the best game possible.
Yes, these guys, like I said this before when I talked about my visit to their studio, they wanted to know what I thought. They wanted to see how I played. They wanted to know what was going on so that they could do better. I was already a fan of Big Huge Games. I'm such a huge fan of Big Huge Games now. 38 Studios, they're doing a great job. I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Honestly, on that note, I just want to make this quick point. I got an email today right before the podcast, and it's an automated email, I'm sure, but it was an email thanking me for trying the demo for their new game.
Awesome.
Yeah. support new IPs, guys. I mean, even you don't have to love it, but at least give them the time of
Give
day.
it a try.
And
Try something new.
And here, you know what? I will actually tie this into a new story. Even if you don't care about Reckoning, play the demo because it's going to give you items in Mass Effect 3.
Which everybody's playing, so
Yeah.
there you go.
So
yeah,
I have
see
to make
if you
sure
like it.
I have to make sure Ezekiel Shepard saves the world.
With your shock ram launcher.
Yes.
so
what,
and
demo
actually,
February 14th,
demo
Valentine's
was
Day.
February 14th for Mass Effect. So
Thank you, Byron.
as well, when you play the Mass Effect 3 demo, I believe that you get things in Amalur.
It's good to know that I'm going to be in trouble with my girlfriend on Valentine's Day.
Oh, look,
Unlock a Garrus costume for Amalur, then I don't care what it is.
Kimberly and I decided that we're going out that weekend as opposed to the middle of the week because there's too much stuff coming out. I'm getting my Vita on the 15th.
It's really because he's getting his Vita on the 15th.
Kim, as long as you understand that, that's real love right there. That's dedication.
I understand.
Yeah.
SSX comes out.
Hey, I'm
if
looking
Kingdom
Darkness.
Hearts game was coming out, he'd have to do the same thing.
Darkness 2, February 7th. Woohoo!
Played the demo, Rob. I didn't like it that much.
Really?
I didn't like the first one.
It was
All
fun
right.
at first, and then it got old really fast. I couldn't even finish the whole demo because I was like having fun, and I was like, "Ooh, this is great," and then I was like, "Oh, it's just like more."
John's trying to bring us on track.
Sorry.
The Darkness, not an RPG. Rob, why did you bring that up?
It has a skill tree.
Okay, don't make me come over there.
It looks like the Crystarium.
I'm going, Rob.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Star Wars.
Alive.
I'm gonna kill someone. Just an FYI.
Kim's the only one in arm reach, dude.
You can't kill her.
All right. Star Wars: The Old Republic had its 1.1 update this week, which added a new flashpoint, which is a dungeon style thingy. So I'm impressed that they're already adding content to the game this early. Rob really doesn't like the game, but I think that's a
Rob thing.
It's not a Rob thing. I think it's Rob that doesn't really like MMOs. So.
Yeah, but for what it is, it's pretty awesome. We're definitely going to have a big episode with Dave and John on. For what it is a very impressive game. I'm just not an MMO person, but yeah, it's very, very impressive, and I can see why people really like it.
All right, well, that's really all we need to go into there. Image Epoch and Namco Bandai announced a new JRPG called Toki Towa, which... What?
Oh, I was just saying the name of it.
Toki Towa, which is about a prince and his wife who are married but have never kissed.
Aww.
And it's Image Epoch, which they're the developers of Luminous Arc and some other and Fate Extra and other stuff. So, I mean, they've got a decent track record. So we'll see how that is and if it's coming to North America. I don't know. Namco Bandai is publishing several games like the Tales of the Abyss, Tales of Grace's F, and Ni no Kuni. So maybe we'll see.
Why is it that when you said the name of the game, the first thing I thought was Funky Cold Medina?
I don't know.
I have no idea. Like that was the first thing. Funky Cold Medina.
I truly don't know. This really isn't news, but Mass Effect 3 has a whole bunch of Kinect stuff, and there's a trailer on the website about it.
Isn't it like interrogations and stuff? Like
yeah,
that?
like you talk to people, you can use voice recognition in battle. There's exploration stuff. It's kind of intriguing. The video's only like 2 minutes long, but you should watch it.
Yeah, cool idea.
I have such an apathy towards Kinect that I haven't looked at that at all, but it does look pretty neat.
Well,
same apathy I have toward motion controls.
Well, but Mass Effect is not using Kinect as motion control.
No,
it's using it in actually a fairly cool way.
Mm-hmm.
It's using it as voice control, which is actually kind of cool. Like I like Dance Central 2. That's one of my favorite Kinect games, and it's nice to be able to say Dance Central 2. Dance or play. What's that? What's the one song with the kid, the Soldier Boy?
That's the one you go for.
Yeah.
I just hope that it's better because I'm having nightmares back to like SOCOM 1, like Boomer, get down. No, Boomer, get down. Boomer.
Things have gotten significantly better since then. My brother worked on that game.
I really love the original. God, what the hell happened to that series? Holy shoot.
It was good up until 4.
The new one? Whoa.
Yeah, no, like 4 was not 4 was not very good. But
Your
you know
brother
what?
didn't work on that one, did he?
No, my brother worked on SOCOM 1. He was part of the online team.
SOCOM 1, SOCOM 2, some of my favorite games. SOCOM 3, Little Miss Guided, SOCOM 4.
So Rob, did you play MAG?
No, I played the
Alright.
beta and I was like, what the hell is this nonsense?
Oh, pretend MAG is like I like MAG. It's got lots of stuff going on, but MAG is really kind of like SOCOM 4 multiplayer. But
You know what the problem is? I went mouse and keyboard for a while to play Left 4 Dead on my PC. I can't go back to I will no longer play a shooter on my PlayStation 3. I can't do it anymore.
okay, well, I can respect that. I think that they work well enough, but that's neither here nor there.
Yep.
Star Trek Online now free. So if you like that other science fiction show, you can go and you can make yourself a Klingon or some kind of Federation guy and be like, red alert! And things go and they're like, pew, pew.
It's been a long
My question is, how many characters are there named KAAAAAAHN?
You know what? That took me a minute. Now I got the damn Enterprise theme stuck.
Come on!
'Cause I've got faith in my soul. And no one's gonna. Guys, stop me, okay? Please.
Yeah,
I'm getting tired.
I think we're good. So it's free to play. It's available from Perfect World and Cryptic. Go and download it. It's free. I don't know if you get any kind of advanced accounts for having the retail box copy, but they've been like $5 on Amazon forever. So if they do, go find yourself a box copy, get all those special favorite things.
Cool.
Can
Can we talk about a? Oh, go ahead.
No,
go ahead. I was gonna say, can we talk about a rumor?
Rumor's not really news.
Well, it's kind of news about a little game you might have heard of. Came out of kind of a game about the spiritual embodiment and the darkness within it.
Oh, okay. There is potentially DLC for Dark Souls. Shut up.
I'm so happy.
Rob.
I'm sorry.
There's potentially DLC for Dark Souls. There are absolutely no details available at this time.
Please,
Next.
Please, God, please. If there's
No, it's over.
Okay,
We're
I'm
done with that part of news, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Growlancer, Wayfarer of Time, aka Growlancer 4, is slated for U.S. release in July.
Yay.
And much like they did for Gungnir, EB Games Canada released the information early.
Is that like GameStop completely blowing the Resident Evil 6 announcement this morning?
If that's what they did, yes.
Yep. There were definitely stands with Resident Evil 6 at GameStops this morning. It's like, whoopies. I gotta say, they kept that secret pretty tight-lipped, though. Not bad.
The game that I'm very excited for, Pokemon Plus Nobunaga's Ambition, has been dated in Japan for March 17th.
What the?
Will we get it here?
I truly hope so.
Wait, what?
Pokemon Plus Nobunaga's Ambition for the DS.
Remember we were talking about people going out there doing crazy stuff?
You guys can't see the expression on my face right now. It is utter bewilderment.
Okay, so Rob, here's the deal. You're a general in Edo era Japan.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
And you fight against other generals and their Pokemon with your Pokemon.
My Pokemons, let me show you them.
You know what? I love Nobunaga's Ambition and I love Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I am so bewildered at this game. I truly, if it doesn't get announced for U.S. release, I think that I'm going to import it just to see what it's about.
What the? You know what this is? This is like the joke that people were making that Naughty Dog makes like 3 games and then they make a kart racing game. You know, they did it with Crash Bandicoot and they did it with Jak and Daxter. This is the equivalent of if they came out with an Uncharted kart racing game.
I would play that.
Still, best joke ever, Penny Arcade. Next Splinter Cell game is going to be a kart racing game. You're going to race against terrorists in the dark. All right, more news. Litigious stuff. Bethesda, who had sued Interplay several years ago, they now have all the rights to Fallout. They had initially... when they purchased the rights to Fallout, they licensed back rights to the MMORPG to Interplay. Interplay was supposed to get up a bunch of money and start development. Bethesda said that they didn't. So essentially there was a settlement. Bethesda paid Interplay $2 million, and they have the license back as well. Interplay keeps the license for the original 3 Fallout games, 1, 2, and Tactics.
That's
until the
want.
until the end of the year 2013, and then Bethesda gets them back. Also, unrelated, they sued the developer that was apparently working on this for Interplay. All that came with that was the developer said, we're not going to use your intellectual property, and Bethesda said, okay.
I don't want to speculate too much, but a lot of people have been on, message boards. We're not going to speculate here, but a lot of people have been on message boards saying that, Fallout Online wasn't real and that this was a payout for Interplay. I don't want to speculate on that. I think it's kind of cheeky for people to do that because, people could have been working really hard on this game, and for people to imply that Interplay was just going for money, I don't know. I really don't like that thought process.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. What I will speculate about, though, is the fact that ZeniMax Online has been working on a game for like a year and a half. I'm convinced that game will become Fallout Online.
Do you think we're going to see Fallout Online before Fallout 4? Do you think that that'll be the one that they put online?
I don't think that it's going to be a either or. Remember, ZeniMax Online is a completely different setup. It's not Bethesda Softworks. It's ZeniMax Online, and ZeniMax Online has been working on this game, this unnamed MMO for who knows how long. And I think the engine that they've been creating and the things that they've been creating are going to become Fallout Online.
I would definitely see that.
I hope it's good.
I'm sure that we'll see Fallout 4 out of Bethesda Softworks, and it's going to be it's going to be soon.
You think it's going to be soon?
I think that we're probably going to honestly. I think that we're going to see it either the end of this year or
the
first. I do.
Now you mean see it, not like release?
No. I think that. Well, we'll see. I'm convinced that it will be on a fairly quick turnaround.
Well, if they got this new Gamebryo 2.0, whatever they're calling it, and they were able to turn Skyrim. Well, but they worked on Skyrim for what, 2 years? So
you know what? Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit. I thought Fallout 3 came out in 2009. It didn't. It came out in 2008. I got my years wrong. So probably next year then.
Yeah, I think it'll. So it was 3 years then for Skyrim.
Yeah, I think
it was 3 years.
I still think that we're going to see a shortened turnaround for Fallout 4.
I think you're right. I'm very excited for Fallout 4. I want to see that. And again, I'm after playing the 13.2 demo, I am very sorry I was so critical of Skyrim. I did really enjoy Skyrim, and I just want to reiterate that. But I don't like that world nearly as much as I like the post-apocalyptic, tongue-in-cheek nature of Fallout.
It was 2.5 years between Oblivion and Fallout 3. I don't think that 2 years between Skyrim and Fallout 4 is a stretch at all.
No.
Yep, that seems like a good argument, and I'll be there for it. Do we think new consoles, or do we think
No.
this console generation?
This console generation. Look, because Oblivion came out almost 2005. So yeah, a year after. A year, oh, not even a full year, so about 6 months after the new console. So who knows? But I think that because they have just created this new engine, and I think that we're also going to see this has been a lengthy console generation and will continue to be a lengthy generation. While we are going to see the Wii U this year, it's not as if the Wii U is a step up in power from the other consoles.
Right. It's a step. I mean, it's definitely
it's a step up from the Wii. It's kind of
a Wii S3.
Yeah, it's a Wii S3.
Honestly, I'm not ready for new consoles.
I'm not either.
I'm not either.
Keep it where it's at.
But
we're getting so many good games now. I don't want them to make new ones because we'll have to go through that whole growing pains period where they learn how to not make crappy games.
So I think they should stretch it a little. I think this was a hard generation for them to come into, and I think that stretching it is not a bad idea.
I think that sales are also incredibly brisk on these consoles still.
Absolutely.
I gotta say though, like I definitely mentioned it on the end of the year spectacular episode that I wasn't ready for new consoles, but to get back to Amalur real quick, I played Amalur on my PS3 and I played it on my pretty beefy rig. I mean, it's not my rig is by no means top of the line anymore. I mean, it's a year old, but it's still got a 68.
But you see like the 7990s coming out, which just came out like last week.
And they're still way too expensive to be cost effective.
Yeah, but consider this: a 7990 on its own, just the video card, is $550.
Yeah.
Like, and that's none of the other components. That's just the video card. Even to say, well, they're going to stick the equivalent of a 6850 in there, you're still looking at, to make that cost effective and the ability to mass produce that in a smaller chip, it's going to be a while.
I agree, but I do think that Amalur running on my PS3 compared to my desktop with the 6870, the game looks downright fugly on PS3 compared to my machine. And that was when I was going...
But I feel like that's a comparison that not a whole lot of people are going to have a problem with, because...
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I didn't play it on PC at all, and I thought it looked great.
There was a point for a while where games were looking better on the consoles.
Yeah, and that point always gets surpassed eventually.
And it's always going to be an up and down, because consoles for their entire generation are going to be the same equipment. Right. That doesn't happen with games. You know what? Honestly, if I were to play Amalur on PC with my current rig, the one that's got a 5650 or 5670 in it, would probably not look as good as the console version.
You might be surprised. You might be. My old laptop looked way better. Left 4 Dead looked way better on that thing than on 360.
But Left 4 Dead was also a PC.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. I don't know. I'm not ready for new consoles, but that a couple of games like that and Space Marine looks so much better on PC.
But I think that we're getting closer and closer to the point where that divide is not so huge for the average consumer. I think that the super hardcore are going to say, oh yeah, I want this on my PC, but not necessarily so for the average person. As long as the game looks good, I think they're going to be happy.
I'm pretty much shying away from buying just about anything for the PS3 unless it's an exclusive, just because it does look better on my PC, and I prefer that. So, well, that's just me.
I'm planning on upgrading. I'm getting an i5 2500K next month, and I'm sticking to a 6550 a 6850 into my machine. So
I'm building my PC. What do you mean 6850? Like,
that's the ATI graphics.
Oh, okay, that's why I've been using NVIDIA. That's why.
Yeah, no, I find ATIs are a little bit more cost effective, even if they're not quite as powerful.
Yeah, I really like my 6870, and I'm gonna hopefully keep that in there for a couple more years, and then do an upgrade. I mean, I love the fact that with my desktop, like this summer, I plan on putting 24 gigs of RAM in, and it's only going to cost me like $100, and then I'm going to put another 2 hard drives inside of it. So.
I feel like I'm in a room with guys discussing their cars and what they're going to do to them.
Hey, I just built you a computer.
Yeah, we were talking about dress spheres. I don't want to hear about it.
No, well,
Too much man.
That's what she said.
I find it interesting that you're saying you're going to stick, 24 gigs of RAM in there. If your machine has 4 DIMMs, you can just get 16 gigs of RAM on 4 DIMM sticks, and it'll cost you nothing.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. You're right. No, I'm going to talk to you about this because the RAM thing I still don't I have 6 gigs of RAM in there, and it still runs like butter. But
yeah, when it comes to games right now at this point in time,
4 is the standard.
Yeah, anything more than 4 gigs of RAM doesn't get you anything.
Yeah, I know.
Skyrim didn't even use 4 until the patch just came out.
Yeah, I was really surprised that Amalur used 4 gigs of RAM. I was like, whoa. Yeah, Amalur scales very nicely. I mean, it looks good on PC. It looks really good. So, cool. Is that it for news? We've gone really long.
Yeah, this is one last piece of news, and it's one that we're probably not going to talk a lot about. Cthulhu Saves the World, which I actually talked about earlier with Zeboid Games, coming to new platforms. They dropped the price on the Xbox Live indie version of the game to $1 or 80 Microsoft points.
Go get it. Go get it.
Yeah, it's $3 on the PC, and it comes with Breath of Death, which is their original title. They also announced they're porting it to iOS, Android, and the Mac App Store.
Cool.
Nice.
That's great for them. Those were 2 fun games.
Well,
I had some funny stuff in them too.
I say it again because I'm all about attaching ourselves to greatness. Robert Boyd was a member of our forums for a long, long time. He's a good guy. Support him and his company. He's doing a good thing.
Why doesn't he come and talk to us, John?
Because he's busy making games now.
Fine. All right. Is that it?
I think that's it. That's most big things. Oh, go read the write-up that my brother wrote about board.
I want to play that game.
Super Dungeon Explorer looks really cool.
All right. So looks like we're going to have a lot to talk about here in the next month or so. We're going to have probably a big show for Final Fantasy 13 too. I mean, we've only been able to tear into the demo, and I think we want to give that game its due. We got Amalur to talk about. We got Old Republic. We definitely want to get John and Dave in here, and Kim, now that you have my account, you can play it. So we definitely want to get people...
Survivor 2?
Hmm?
Devil
Oh,
Survivor
yes.
2.
Devil Survivor 2?
There's a lot coming out this month, which is well, not this month, next month, which
Next
is
month, February.
Yeah. I'm gonna count Final Fantasy as coming out in February because it comes out on January 31st.
Yeah.
Tales of the Abyss 3DS.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
There's so much stuff coming out in February, and it's all RPGs. So you know what? If you have been someone that's been complaining that there's not enough good RPGs coming out, welcome to February.
Yes. Go buy a 3DS and play the best Tales game ever.
Yes, I agree.
I promise we're going to do a Shadow Hearts podcast. I just need to play the rest of them, and I can't find the time. So, but
Did you finish the first one yet?
No, honestly, I haven't. I keep getting. Here's the problem. My girlfriend was so awesome to me, and she bought me so much stuff at Christmas, but she inundated me with content, and I'm stressed. I'm stressed with the number of games that I have to play and the number of books I have to read. I'm sitting here. I'm like,
I have the same problem.
I have to play a game one at a time. So like I'm playing Skyward Sword right now, and I'm focused on that. And it's like I want Skyward Sword beat before I start anything else.
Rob, when
I
you play
want that
Shadow
game
Hearts,
beat.
get the good ending and then watch the bad ending on YouTube because the bad ending is what they went with Shadow Hearts 2.
We're going to do a Shadow Hearts podcast. I really feel like unfortunately, I feel like since we have so much coming out, it's going to be closer to the summer. But I promise you guys, we're going to do it.
Yeah, we want to do more retrospective stuff. We only record once every 2 weeks, and that's pretty much as much as we can do and still keep these well edited. I know people have said that they want more podcasts. We're cranking them out every 2 weeks. That's about as good as we're going to get. We will do more retrospective stuff. It's just going to be in the slow time, so expect it maybe in April-ish, and then maybe again in like September.
Yep.
Maybe August.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we always have a big E3 podcast to look forward to, and
Woot.
I'm so jealous. Next year, I'm going to E3 with you guys, and we're doing the show live, and we're gonna get really, really drunk. We're gonna reenact the One Up Yours podcast. That is the reason that I podcast, where they did it from the poolside at the Figaro Hotel, drunk out of their minds. That's the reason I do this show, is because that was the funniest 3 hours of my life. Just listening to those four guys just bashing each other. That's the reason I do this, and I want to do that.
See, I'm happy that type of alcohol exists,
Rob,
but it's not. No.
Bashing each other, everybody would go and attack Rob.
That's true.
Rob, you have not been with me at a show when I'm the boss. You will have lots of work to do.
I will have lots of work to do, but I want to do a live podcast, damn it.
Okay.
It's like been a dream of mine.
We'll do it.
So, we will be very happy at E3. We're in the process of getting ourselves all set up for that. So, very excited. I'm waiting for hotels to open up with reservations from the show, but that's not going to happen until next month.
Yep.
I paid off a credit card so I could afford to go to this. Oh, goodness.
All we have to say is that we have lots and lots planned. Thank you again to everybody for supporting the show. I mean, you guys don't understand how much I love doing this. And, sometimes I get a little pissy, like, oh, man, I really don't want to record a podcast or whatever. And then we get here and we have such a good time. And I love to see discussion on the message boards. So, the support from you guys has always been great. Make sure you're subscribing to us through iTunes, through the RSS feed, giving us feedback. Thank Zach for busting his ass to edit these damn things. Like, I feel so bad for that guy. Like, with the whole college thing and just being a workhorse in college and still finding the time to edit these. So definitely thanks Zach on the boards. He is the podcast mom, and without him, like if I was editing these things, they'd be going up like once a month. So thank him for that. And, thanks to everybody for this show. For John, Kim, and Steven, Final Fantasy 13-2 sucks. You heard it here first. I'm kidding.
We're doing so well.
I know. I had to get it out there a little bit. So, but thank you everybody for listening, and look forward to more episodes.